By mid-afternoon, the judge charged the jurors, and the case is now in their hands. Joining us now from New York with analysis of the day is Judge Alex Ferrer, a former Florida Circuit Court judge and host of Judge Alex, who has been following this case. Judge, the dramatic wind-up to all of this today. And first, I have to get your take on the defense closing. Now, a lot of people have been fairly critical of how the defense has handled this case. I think Omara came with a little less zest than I would have liked, but tell us what your take was.
Well, I mean, that's his style. Everybody has a different style. You know, you saw Bernie Dillaranda yesterday, and I thought that was a little over the top. In fact, I thought some of John Guy's closing today was a little over the top, a little dramatic, but they have emotion to work with, and the reason they have emotion to work with is because they don't have a lot else beyond emotion. O'Mara is more subtle and more to the point. I thought he made a lot of good points. I thought that saying, you know, I wish there was a box that you could check off innocent because he's totally innocent was good, because one of the things they're concerned about is compromise verdict. You know, jury says, well, they charged second, but, you know, we don't want to say not guilty because this is a 17-year-old who was unarmed who was killed, even though they haven't proven the case or self-defense looks solid. Maybe we can settle for manslaughter. Well, that's as bad for George Zimmerman as a second-degree murder. So by saying, I wish there was a box that's completely innocent, and you could check it off or write it on there, it's kind of like not guilty is the compromise. And he put up good evidence and a good argument for a complete not guilty verdict. As a matter of law, I think the right verdict legally is not guilty. But there is that huge risk that the jury is going to say, we want to compromise and give manslaughter.
And Judge, before we get to the prosecutor's rebuttal, I loved the moment where he hit the stopwatch, Mara, and we went through that 4-minute time period. And for a lot of folks who haven't been following this, tell us what that 4 minutes represented of dead silence in the courtroom.
Yeah, he sat there for 4 minutes with dead silence, and he said that was the amount of time that that Trayvon Martin had to get home if he was really afraid. You know, the prosecution's made this deal about Trayvon Martin was afraid of George Zimmerman. He was this crazy guy who's following him and who's not afraid of that. And this pointed out that if he really was afraid, he had 4 minutes to get to his house, and the house was, as he described it, a football throws away from where he was. So that was a very good point, but I would have followed it up because the allegation or the implication there was Trayvon didn't want to go home. He was upset that this, as he called him, creepy-ass cracker was following him, and he wanted a confrontation. That was the implication there. I would have followed up with Rachel Jean Tell, who had said in an earlier statement that Trayvon said, she heard Trayvon say to him, why are you following me? And she heard George Zimmerman say, what are you talking about? If you actually approach somebody you've been chasing, you wouldn't say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about is what you say when somebody comes out of the darkness and you weren't expecting them and they confront you and say, why are you following me?
Yeah, it would be like, what are you talking
yeah,
about?
Exactly.
Like, why are you asking me that?
So that would coincide with the 4 minutes of he could have gotten away if he wanted to, but he didn't because he wanted to confront this guy. And so, you know, it was very powerful. Yeah. Of course, the defense used it to say he didn't go home because he didn't want him to see where he lived.
Meanwhile, the prosecution, they get their rebuttal.
The prosecution,
yeah, the prosecution gets their rebuttal, and the argument is about the boy versus basically that strange man, that grown man who he referred to as strange, a strange person. And it was very emotional. Look into your hearts. Basically saying, are we that type of country to allow this type of man to go free? How did that play, again, as the final punctuation mark on this trial?
I think that played well. I mean, there's no question this is an emotional case. When you have a 17-year-old boy who was unarmed and is killed, it tears at your heartstrings. You know, I've mentioned it before. My mother unfortunately lost 2 sons. I know it's very, very difficult to get past losing a child. So the jury, especially of all women, but any jury would sympathize with this. So the prosecution is pounding the emotional side of this case, saying to the jury, as he said, you know, I don't have Trayvon here to put my arm around like O'Mara did around George Zimmerman during his closing. So that does play well. But the reason they're playing that is because they don't have anything else. The prosecution's theory has changed so many times in this case because they frankly don't have the evidence to beat a claim of self-defense. They originally said Trayvon was on the bottom. When that didn't work, they said maybe he was standing. When that didn't work, they said, well, he was on top, but maybe he was backing up. But they don't have any evidence that that was even going on. So if they get a conviction for manslaughter, it'll be because the jury wanted to compromise to not make this seem like something minimal. I don't see a conviction for second that stands up on appeal.
Yeah, well, that's the way the jury operates. I mean, that just, to me, taking that tack is kind of a travesty, right?
It is.
That's not how the justice system is supposed to work. So if you view the justice system as impartial and it's supposed to be that to me is a farce. That shouldn't be the way it went down.
It shouldn't go down that way, and you know, the bottom line is that I think that should have been addressed a little more strongly by O'Mara in his closing. He should have talked about compromise and how that is a dereliction of the duty of the jury. They should it's either proven or it's not. Bottom line.
Exactly. Judge Alex, thanks so much. And up next, how effective